Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we turn to talking about another military-based video game that's getting backlash from far leftists. Recently we talked about a Tom Clancy game called Elite Squad that had some of the far left very upset because they seemed to make the villains rather similar to one of their favorite pet groups, the BLM pro-Marxist group, of course. This came up in that game naturally as they were coming up with a scenario where a big and violent group was trying to take over the world by using propaganda to pit people against each other, and that struck a little too close to home for those pro-BLM people. This, of course, is a natural kind of progression in a military action adventure shoot 'em up kind of video game. You see, these kinds of games tend to see heroes fighting bad guys that can be all kinds of things like bad countries, dictators, terrorists, spies, things like that. And that's actually what's come up in today's new video. Today we have another example of that, another example of a video game making a sort of simple correlation, making a heroes versus villains setup that's also based partially on history. And it's gone to trigger many social justice warriors, leftists, and particularly their pro-socialist and communist allies. Yes, socialism and communism is on the rise in 2020. Go figure. I mean, it's been many decades since we defeated the communists multiple times. And in fact, that's what's come up in today's story. Today, we're talking about a new game called Call of Duty Cold War, which is, of course, about the Cold War, which was America versus Russia, capitalist versus communist. We, of course, ended up winning that long drawn out battle, so to speak. And that's why Call of Duty is now making a game about it. It's an interesting topic, but of course, it's triggering the far left because they like communists now. Communism is the far left, and they're mad that the communists are a villain in this new game. So we're going to talk about that story more, go over the details, some of the lies and propaganda, and spin around it. We're going to correct the record and do all that real soon. But first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. Virtual Shield makes the only virtual private network that I know and trust, and I keep it on my computers and smart devices pretty much 24/7, always while I'm browsing online. Virtual Shield has a strict no-log policy, plus it was built from the ground up specifically for privacy protection and not to make a profit off your data. Virtual Shield believes you have a right to remain private, as do we here at NoBS. And now, a special offer due to the recent pandemic, Virtual Shield is offering its services 50% off to help customers in need to protect themselves. So go to my custom link, which is below this video, or you could type in virtualshield.com/NoBS. Great, now that that's out of the way, let's get to a story about this. It says right here, this is from Kotaku, a very biased gaming magazine / website, and it says, Call of Duty trailer recklessly promotes far-right conspiracy theory. Now, this is an interesting way to promote this story. I'm not sure where they're getting this whole conspiracy theory thing out of, but they do show this picture. This is a very famous communist detractor. He was formerly a Russian KGB operative. He has some very famous interviews that actually get spread on YouTube quite often because he exposes a lot of the terrible tactics that the communists use to try and attack America. Specifically, as you can see in this subtitle, it says, Yuri Bezmenov claimed that the feminist and equal rights movements were Soviet ploys to weaken the United States. Now, we can obviously see why they would be upset about this. Feminist and equal rights are pretty much what the leftists are going for now. Now, let's also address the obvious. Actual feminism and equal rights are not necessarily bad at all. In fact, they're based and grounded in things that most people should agree with. We should have women have rights and have equality, just like everyone should have rights and equality. That's the basis of this background. But we know that the current modern movements are just using that humble, noble cause as a disguise, as a front, as a mask, if you will, to hide their actual nefarious interests. And that's why it's been brought up by this interview. This is a Russian communist detractor admitting some of the propaganda tactics of the communists. And I believe this is an image from the game, like they show an image from this famous interview, and it probably comes up in the trailer or something. And I think that's what's triggered this whole thing. And it's just showing how messed up and far left the left has gone. They're totally pro-communist and even denying reality. Like they call this a conspiracy theory. But as we'll see later, once we get through some of this has actually been confirmed. This is like something that was proven in 1995 in actual American government documents. So it's hardly a conspiracy when it's actually true. We've seen them use this conspiracy excuse many times too. That's another tactic to make it seem like information and facts that they don't like are not true, because they basically paint the people as conspiracy theorists, and or really that's implying that they're crazy. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War's debut trailer, which has already attracted controversy, gives a lot of airtime to Soviet defector Yuri Bezmenov and his views which have in recent years become a dangerous rallying cry for far-right conspiracy theories and the people who peddle them. The teaser, which was released last week to hype up the more recent reveal, intersperses stock footage of major world events with a 1984 interview of Bezmenov, who claimed to have been an informant for the KGB before defecting to the United States. During the interview, he describes the Soviet Union's alleged use of active measures that, in theory, are meant to destabilize opponents without direct military conflict by way of changing a society's power structure and economy. In short, Bezmenov's suggestion in the full interview is that extending equality to the United States non-white, non-male population made it right for Soviet invasion. Now, this is a total mischaracterization, and it's also like giving you these like outs, like, oh, supposedly, allegedly, like they're kind of trying to act like it's not proven to be true. But this is a real interview. This is a real detractor. As you can see by this razor fist tweet here, he says, apparently a conspiracy theory is something which is later irrefutably confirmed via officially released KGB documents beginning in 1995. So the Russians themselves have admitted that this is one of their strategies. And I think the article and the leftists are trying to hide behind those noble goals. Like I mentioned in the intro and before we started reading this, the feminist and the equal rights things sound good on paper. Obviously, people want women to be happy and healthy and fair, and we want minorities and everyone to be treated equally. Like, no one is against that. But the problem is that feminism has gone far beyond that. They've had equal rights for a while. Now they're pushing for like female power and like girl power, and like they want to be treated above us. Same with the minorities, same with like Black Lives Matter movement. Like, they don't want equality. They don't even claim to want things to be fair. They want to be treated better than everyone. So this is a very destabilizing factor when you try to favor other groups and try to create strife between people. This is race baiting. This is like class warfare, and it's being done by some of the best in the game. Further time, the Soviets were certainly pure propaganda masters. I mean, this is where that stuff comes from. This is like classic commie rhetoric and propaganda, and it's really being defended and pushed by Kotaku, who seems to be on the side of our enemies, on the side of the communists, and they want to defend this. And this is part of the whole mess. This Cold War suggestion, this new game, is obviously triggering leftists because they can't come to terms with the fact that their history is really bad. It's the same thing with the Democrats and them having, bad people in their party's history. The people that, tormented blacks after slavery was made illegal. There was that group of people in white clothing that would attack them, and those guys were Democrats. That's a Democratic history, and that's why they try to rewrite the history. Like, they claim that the party switched, and here Kotaku is rewriting the history of the Soviets, who have already admitted to using these tactics. And the only other thing I'll mention before we move forward is the Cold War is a very different kind of subject. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar. I'm sure most Americans who have been through a couple history classes can remember this, but essentially the Cold War was like cold because there wasn't like a hot battle. There wasn't like a straight conflict between the US and Russia. Basically, I mean, they were certainly like going at each other from the angles, like people were trying to defend other countries. Soviets tried to take over these other countries and prop up other communist nations. America tried to defend other democratic places, other capitalists. That's where we led to the Vietnam War. That was like a proxy war. But essentially, just so you know, that's why there's all this propaganda going around and these kinds of alternative tactics, is because it wasn't an all-out war like a classic war like World War II or the Revolution or something like that. Those wars also contained like propaganda and stuff, but it wasn't as heavy-handed and as necessary, and it wasn't like the main form of the combat like it was with the Cold War. The official Call of Duty trailer refers to Bezmenov's claims as a chilling warning and implores viewers to know your history, which sure feels like a tacit endorsement of the man's deep deeply flawed ideology. The guy was a communist who came to America and defected. So what's his flawed ideology? Why is this so triggering to them? I mean, Call of Duty is just making a game based on historical figures and evidence, and they use this interview, it seems, in a proper way, like to kind of show the kind of negative stuff coming from Soviet Union, the very dark side of that. You know, you got to make your villain out to be evil, and they're using facts. So I don't see why Kotaku's so defensive. Like, they're really keen on defending these communists, which is kind of troubling. You know, it's kind of messed up. The person interviewing Bezmenov in the footage is far-right conspiracy theorist G. Edward Griffin, who has since made a name for himself in denialism and recruitment. As a member of John Birch's Society, a famously anti-communist organization based on establishing a more conservative government in the United States, it makes sense that Griffin would peddle Bezmenov's claims about Soviet interference by way of social progress without any critical analysis. In the Call of Duty trailer, Activision presents Bezmenov's words bereft of this important context. What context? You're just mixing it all up. You're trying to make him look like a conspiracy theorist. Like, now this guy's a conspiracy theorist. Like, everyone is a conspiracy theorist. Like, anyone that says something that liberals don't like, it's a conspiracy to them. Oh my God, there's a conspiracy. It's like, come on. This is not a conspiracy. Trying to make the country more conservative is not even a bad thing. Like, you could disagree with the conservative politics, but to compare them to communists and conspiracies and all this other stuff, it's just absolutely absurd. Like, this Griffin guy, as far as I know, I'm not sure about all this other stuff like denialism and recruitment, like whatever. I'm highly doubting it though, based on the way Kotaku is labeling everything else and making this so woke and so terrible. Like, I really doubt that. As the name suggests, Black Ops Cold War deals with the decades-long struggle between the United States and Soviet Union, which engaged in various forms of political and proxy warfare as the globe's prevailing superpowers after World War II. While Bezmenov's warnings seem like obvious fodder for amping up the conflict in the game, his appearance in the game's advertisement has functioned as a sort of dog whistle to legions of reactionaries who consider attempts at establishing social equity to be proof of a far-right conspiracy theory known as cultural Marxism. Okay, here's another thing. I saw this on Twitter previously too. How is cultural Marxism a conspiracy theory? Everything's a conspiracy theory to these guys. It's insane. This is something that Black Lives Matter has fully admitted. They said that they're Marxist. We've talked about this before. They push cultural Marxism, which is a tenet of communism. It comes from Karl Marx, who basically wrote the book on communism, and he wanted to spread this kind of cultural Marxism. It's about focusing on identity, creating class warfare and division, and eventually forming this kind of weird utopia where everyone's free and everyone works lame jobs and can't make money and all this dumb stuff. And essentially, this is just more BS from Kotaku. Then they talk about dog whistles. Dog whistles is another BS term. There's no dog whistles. Like, what? Are you trying to take your dog to the dog park or something? Like, this is not a dog whistle. Like, no one is saying something secretly with their words. Like, you're just assuming something different from what people are saying. That's on you. You're being terrible. You're supporting communists and making a controversy out of nothing. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Also, hit that like button to get this video shared. Subscribe if you're new and hit the bell for notifications too. Until next time, have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow.